Cyber criminals are becoming more intelligent and more sophisticated, and as the attack surface of your business begins to grow, we're all vulnerable. It doesn't matter whether you're big or whether you're small. So on today's panel, we've got some cybersecurity experts, and we're going to talk about what you need to do to protect your business, but also what you need to do in the event of an attack. On today's panel, I'm joined by Chris Ulliot, who's the Chief Information Security Officer at NatWest. Also, Melanie Oldham, who's the CEO and founder of Bob's Business. She's got 15 years experience focused on the human side of cyber training. And also Hazel Burton, who works with Cisco's threat intelligence team. And she's got a huge amount of experience and insights on the effects of cyber on UK businesses. So Chris, tell us, what kind of threats do organisations face, and how does what you do apply to medium-sized businesses?
So the way we look at the problem is, as a business, we're heavily reliant on technology. So we try not to use the word cyber. We talk about how technology can be abused to deliver a bad outcome. And that's applicable to a medium-sized business as much as it is for a bank the size of NatWest. Depending on which statistic you read, it's about 50% of smaller businesses suffer a cyber attack of some form. And that can range from anything like viruses that delete data, all the way through to attacks against your HR system to add phantom employees such that the fraudsters get added to the payroll. But I've also seen some of the legal firms, so small solicitors being attacked, not because of what the solicitor has, but because they deal with maybe house sales. And what they do is they attack the email system, and then they email individuals saying, for your deposit, this is where you need to put it. And that can be quite a wide range of attacks. So you need to be aware of what the fraudsters are doing and how they could impact your own business.
And Hazel, you've got a huge amount of experience of working with medium-sized businesses. How are they vulnerable?
If you're a business, you'll know exactly how hard it is to break into the market, and you're incredibly innovative. But unfortunately, you are exposed to the same attacks as larger businesses. And unfortunately, cyber attackers see smaller businesses as easier targets because they don't necessarily have the same security infrastructure and certainly not the same resource. So they kind of see them as a bit of a quick win.
They haven't got a Chris.
They haven't got a Chris, no. And also they are slightly more likely to pay up if they're subject to a ransomware attack as well, because what they'll do is weigh up the cost of paying versus the cost of getting everything back up online. Of those that suffered a breach in the last year, 40% were down for 8 hours or longer, an entire day not being able to work because they were trying to find where the data was stored. So they weigh up the cost of getting back online versus paying the cyber criminals, and sometimes they make the difficult choice to pay. So once you've paid once, they then see, oh, you've paid once, maybe you'll pay again.
The point is, these attacks can start quite wide and generic, but once they find a soft underbelly, which is quite often people, they can actually focus and be very specific to your hardware or actually that individual's profile.
Exactly. So they'll look at what they've found and try to make the most of it and deliver what we call an on-demand menu of attacks. So that same type of attack, they could look and see if that user is on a high bandwidth network. Great, let's deploy a plugin which will spread the malware faster across the network.
And Melanie, I was looking at some stats, and 78% of UK businesses, they understand that cyber is an issue, but only 31% have done something about it. And you run a company that does cyber training, focused very much on the human element of it. Does that surprise you that so few have done anything?
No, because I think the problem is a lot of the time it's about the terminology and the language you use, and therefore subsequently people can't relate to it and can't understand it. A lot of people in the UK don't actually understand cyber and think it's a technical problem, when actually it's about how we interact with technology, but also how we manage and process the information, whether that's personal information or company information, and that remains the same across the board. But because we put titles and terminology on it, people tend to sort of avoid it because ignorance is bliss.
And what you do is important because the humans, in many ways, your employees, they're the soft underbelly in many ways for cyber criminals, aren't they? So what are you seeing that's making companies vulnerable?
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. So obviously there's some great technologies in place, but everything is managed, operated by people, and obviously over 90% of information security breaches are a result of human error and human mistake. And we are humans and we do make mistakes, and that's where the problem lies. And it's very much about sort of concentrating on those behaviours and influencing what people do, which are our human nature aspects, and influencing those in a way that actually is a little bit more suspicious to what's happening in the environment around them.
Hazel, if you're a medium-sized business, you're going to process, there's a triangle, isn't there? So you've got people, policies and technology. So maybe just talk people through how you best implement a strategy around those three things.
Well, actually, they all need to work together. You shouldn't take one in isolation because you will stop far less attacks if you do. So we did an experiment with our RED team, our incident response team recently, and they looked at if you did take one of those aspects, either people, policies or technology, just took one, how many threats could you stop? And we identified if you just took technology, you just had technology in your business, you could only stop 26% of attacks. If you only had people, 4%, and if you only had policies, 10%. Now that only makes up to 40%, so what needs to happen is those three need to be working in tandem together. So make sure that your people are aware of the kind of policies that you have, such as always installing the latest software, changing your password every 3 months.
Yeah, and I think the problem is in today's connected world, we all have devices and we take them sort of outside of the work environment. And I think when it comes to policies as well, something we see very often is information security teams will write and rewrite policies and they'll sit on them and wait until they've had senior management approval, and that can delay the process of rolling it out. And actually what you can really do, a really simple tip, is actually roll the policy out and get feedback from the people that are using it, because you will find very, very quickly if the policy doesn't work for them because they haven't got the right technology in place to be able to do it. And it's about getting that continual feedback. So rather than thinking you've got to write a whole load of policies, write one and roll it out and distribute it. And from a sort of a connected device point of view, the thing you need to understand is more and more people are using their personal mobile devices, bring your own devices, to connect to work environments, and that has risks, and people aren't patching their private devices. So it's important talking about how important it is to update.
And there's 2 points
devices.
there. If you're an employer, you should be applying policies in the devices. If you're an employee, you should expect to have policies in your devices as well.
Expect to have policies, but make sure that they're easy to understand. You know, the terminology and language in there is somebody actually explaining what that means, because again, that's another barrier to people adopting them.
Email is the number one delivery method for attacks, and they are focused on getting people to be deceived by either it's someone pretending to be someone else, which we call email spoofing, or an organisation pretending to be another organisation, which we call phishing. And they're getting those people to click on links that are malicious or open attachments that have got malicious codes within them. So getting your people to identify when that might happen, and that can be job specific as well. So if you're in finance, for example, your email address is more likely to be spoofed because you've got a finance person sending an email pretending that they need a wire payment sent straight away. You know, there's always urgency when it comes to cyber criminal behaviour. So setting up a process in place where that wire transfer is always followed up by a phone call just to verify and check.
And Chris, so you know you've got your people, process and technology in place. That's not going to stop attacks, is it? So once you're attacked, what's your advice in terms of what we should do as small business owners?
So to some degree, if you wait till you've been attacked, you've left it too late. So the important thing is to think about what you will do before something happens. Given that an attack is inevitable, sit back ahead of time and work out how you're going to respond. What's important to you? What do you need? Understand what you need to keep your business running, because that enables you to prioritise the actions you'll take when something inevitably does go wrong. If you're a manufacturing company, understanding what technology you need to keep the machines working, because you might decide that actually you're going to isolate those and keep them going. It might be looking at some of the financial attacks that happen, knowing who your business partner is in the bank, so you can phone them up and say, we've made a mistake, we've sent this transaction, and we didn't mean to. We've realised with hindsight it was a mistake. Because if you can act quickly and you've already got a playbook in advance that tells you what to do, it makes it much easier to recover, rather than having that panic of something you haven't thought about occurring and then having to start from scratch there. So there was a large manufacturing company recently that were victim of a ransomware attack where all their data was encrypted and the fraudsters were asking for money to give it back. And because they'd gone through that process of what if, they had offline backups. So they didn't have to pay the ransom. They were just able to copy all of their data back, and they were back up and running very quickly. And it's kind of an example of how thinking ahead of time and preparing can bring huge value down the line.
But the key is to put these plans in place,
Absolutely.
but actually test them, and people rarely do that. So when the wheels do fall off, essentially, the plan doesn't actually work.
And not everyone's in the same position that I am. I have a dedicated security team. But if you're a medium-sized business, there's a growing number of companies that you can go and enlist to help. And if you do that ahead of time, they can get to know how your business works and what's important to you. And then when, like you said, the wheels fall off, you can pick up the phone and you've got someone who's trusted, who's a friend, who can come and help you and stop that panic from causing some rash decisions to be made.
Cyber criminals are finding more devious ways of hiding themselves now, so that they're hiding a malware in encrypted traffic, for example, or they're doing something that we'll call fileless malware. So most anti-spam is designed to pick up a file that's got malicious bits in it, but if there's no file, then it gets in. So they're kind of hiding.
It's like an arms race, isn't it? And you've got to stay ahead of it.
It is, but again, it's from our experience, it's the little things that are actually. So, are you updating? If you're not updating and you're not sort of making sure your software is the most current version, then you're making yourself ultimately vulnerable and susceptible. If you're reusing your passwords, then again, you are really, really making yourself vulnerable. If you're not enabling two-factor, so they're the little things. So, although
yeah, it's the basics that are the most important, and you don't need to write the Shakespeare of cyber plans. Don't feel like you have to go away and do that. There are people to help, and it doesn't need to be perfect from the get-go. Write a minimum viable product, see how it works, definitely. And go from there and add on as it goes.
What I'm hearing from all of you actually is that you need to have a plan, have a strategy. You need to look to your business and assess the risks and the potential impact of an attack, and therefore actually apply the right budget to it as well. Give me one tip, one takeaway tip for those watching about what you advise them to do in terms of best protecting their business.
So for me, I would look at your business ahead of time, work out what's important, and then prepare for the inevitable and practice, such that it becomes muscle memory. And then when things go wrong, you can respond very, very quickly.
For me, it's how quickly we respond that's important, and the thing you need to understand is that we're people and we're powered by emotions, and one of the core things that will help us sort of deal with an incident is communication without a shadow of a doubt, and having really, really effective communication in place, because what you want to happen is when something bad happens, that rather than somebody think, oh no, I've clicked on a link, I shouldn't have done that, I actually want to hide because what I've done is wrong, you want them to turn around and say, actually, I've done it, and go to the information, the communication teams, the CEO of the organisation and say it's happened, because it's what you're doing in that communication point of view is making sure that actually you can actually stop any further damage happening. So if you report or identify a phishing email, then you can isolate that and make sure that nobody else is clicking on the link. You can then also make sure that from a communications point of view, it doesn't get out to a wider audience.
Great advice. And Hazel?
It's really, really important to have a plan, but not one that sits on the shelf gathering dust for a year or so, because cyber doesn't move at that pace. And yeah, it's a great point as well about communication and raising the awareness. So only the IT team really needs to know the intricate details of the plan and what tools and everything, but everyone needs to understand the importance of it. So I would suggest people look at creating cyber advocates. So find people within your organisation who understand it from an importance point of view and can help the IT team when it comes to getting everyone back up and running. And probably a way to do that is to talk to people about the importance of cyber at home as well. So if they understand the importance of securing their own mobile devices or protecting their friends and family from cyber scams, they might take the same approach at work as well.
Well, thanks to the panel for some fantastic advice there. And if you're a medium-sized business, I'm sure there's something for you to take away to help you protect your business against cyber criminals. But if you do want to know more, there's a huge amount of information, advice and tips on the Hub. So just go and search NatWest Business Hub.